The fastest way to ruin your reputation on the internet is to associate yourself with something stupid. Thankfully though, I did that one right out the gate, so I'm comforted by the fact that nobody really expected much from me anyway. Nowadays, liking Sonic the Hedgehog is something to be done ironically, sort of like being friends with the kid who was gifted and weird in elementary and is just burned out and sad in high school. Oh Sonic, we say. Your old friend Mario made the football team, while all you ever seem to do nowadays is eat lunch on the stairs alone while watching Turkey Tom. But it's gotten to the point now where I've seen people make the argument that Sonic as a gameplay concept, that is, going fast, is bad game design, and that Sonic itself is doomed to fail no matter what it does. And to that, I say, Subway Surfers. Because when you get down to it, they're basically the same idea. Only in one of them you don't have to hold down the forward button, which is fine, because despite what our morally bankrupt opponents may think, doing that and watching the hedgehog kick his legs is not the point of playing a Sonic game. That's right, just because the idea is to go fast doesn't mean the game was designed so that the only fun parts are where you do that uninterrupted while oohing and awing at the rodent's tan arms. And if having to hold down the forward button for extended periods of time is an issue in and of itself for you, that's unfortunately the price you pay for getting to move at all, lest we have ourselves another Mario run. Many have also said that the idea of taking your typical platformer level and just setting it to 5 times speed so that neither the player nor the camera can keep up is a terrible idea, which while true, is still not Sonic anymore. And neither is the opposite, where Sonic is just your common shelf platformer with lots and lots of waiting in spite of Sega's many attempts at trying to prove me wrong. Because Sonic is none of these things that many will have you think. Sonic is in fact a viable game concept, so long as it's trying to be Subway Surfers. But what do I mean by that, I hear you asking? And to that, I reply, where's that coming from? The thing that Sonic and Subway Surfers has in common is, and I'm gonna throw this term around a lot so you better sear it into your brains, reaction-based gameplay. You might recognize this idea from other games like Rhythm Heaven, Rhythm Doctor, and Sekiro. You know, rhythm games. Sonic is like dancing. Fine for children, but if you're an adult, you're probably weird about it. But it also captures that feeling of rhythm you get from elegantly flowing between one thing to another all off the cuff of your jib. It'll be hard to explain what I mean without getting into specifics. So let's take a look at Windmill Isle Act 2 from Sonic Unleashed, released 2008, and ooh, did that hurt to say knowing it's the most professional I'll ever sound talking about anything. Get past the soundbite that'll live in your head rent-free for the rest of your life, and you're thrown into a straightforward running section that establishes your momentum immediately. But worry not, video essayists, because this section isn't here just to forsake gameplay for cinematics. No, because here, the player is offered choice. Ooh. There's dash rings up here and a shortcut here and here, and it's up to whether or not you can react to them fast enough to build off the momentum you've been given. That, or you can lose it entirely and trip over this step because your dumbass was too busy boosting to even notice it. This idea of obstacles and shortcuts you need to react to so you don't just go fast, but continue going fast, goes all the way back to Sonic's level design philosophy from the first game. Acts were divided into a faster but more difficult top half that an experienced player would be able to get to and stay in, while a slower but easier bottom half would serve to catch any first-time players when they'd inevitably fail to react to something they didn't see coming. This works really well, because it encourages the player to master the layout of each level so they can be rewarded with this great feeling of fast-paced flow when they're able to chain together their reactions and blast through the level. Kinda like how it feels to speedrun. Not only that, but the punishment for either not being able to react to something or just not knowing it would be there in the first place is just a slightly slower platformer. So either you feel motivated to get better so you can join the Torettos up here, or getting faster times never mattered to you to begin with. Either way, you still get to play a video game. Adding an extra D to Sonic allowed them to expand on this philosophy with new types of reactions like homing attacks, boosting, and more that we'll get to later. But for now, let me address the big blue blur in the room. When boosting was introduced as a mechanic, a lot of people took the tagline a little too seriously and locked their joint onto that boost button before screaming about how they were going too fast to react to that pit. Kinda like a kid crying after they fell and couldn't catch themselves because their arms were too busy making themselves more aerodynamic instead. But if you've developed critical thinking skills, first off, what are you doing here? Second off, you'll understand that you should only go fast when you want to go fast. If you're still learning the level or aren't sure of what's ahead of you, challenging as it might be, it's as simple as relaxing that muscle and accepting the fact that despite featuring a cartoon character, this game can require skill sometimes. But smash your plates now, cause Oppo, we're back in Greece. And even if you did scuff the hedgehog's kicks, it's fine, cause another boost later and you're back on tempo. Next verse, 3 enemies and our performer beautifully reacts and transitions smoothly onto the chorus. Hop a gap, pick up speed, now obey your needs cause we're switching to 2D. See, like I said before, the transition from 2D to 3D wasn't the second worst thing to happen to the series after giving Sonic a kid and then killing Sonic's kid. Everyone agrees 2D Sonic works. All 3D does is add an extra layer of complexity to it. It's just Sega kind of forgot that for their first go-around and made a generic clunky 3D platformer that forsakes reaction-based gameplay and anything resembling rhythm for a cameraman who lied about his vertigo. It took them a few more tries before they started figuring things out, the obvious answer being, treat it like Subway Surfers. Because 3D lets us go from fun reaction-based gameplay in a 3D space back to fun reaction-based gameplay in a 2D space back to fun reaction-based gameplay in a 3D space. That's what 3D Sonic is. It's an endless runner with an ending made up of a gauntlet of different gameplay styles that you're asked to improvise your way through in the fastest and smoothest way possible. It's literally speedrunning the game. Good job maneuvering through that 3D section. Tempo shift, and now we're in 2D to see if you can take your finger off the boost button fast enough to slide under these hurdles. Or maybe you know how to claw, I don't know. But whether you fumbled your way through that or not, we're switching back to 3D, this time on rails. Keep your boost meter full and take dash rings to speed up, except, wait, actually taking the dash rings is slower. Huh, well that's weird. Must be bad design, right? Let's just hope a self-help book author doesn't get his hands on that and explains to you why your dyslexia actually makes you better at reading. But keep going and you have to jump to stay on the high road. Yeah, no stomp, get shot like an anode boom. Input for the gun, leap and run, slide overdone, home and rerun, and a quick time event that's fun? Even I'm surprised by it. But when the rest of the gameplay is basically just quick time events but with context that actually makes you feel cool doing them, having the occasional crescendo where you have to throw out a sequence of buttons actually works incredibly well. Like, no joke, they should bring these back. Because all you gotta do is hit me with an audio cue and my Pavlovian dog starts howling. These reactions are the backbone of Sonic gameplay. Training the player to make associations like, oh, a line of rings, I need to light dash, or oh, I'm in a quick step area, I need to focus on lanes now. Feels so satisfying when you've mastered them all and can start whittling down your times for an S rank. Now there's a valid counter-argument to the idea that words like optimize should be thrown around near a Sonic game, namely the fact that children can't pronounce them. The experience a highly skilled speedrunner will have with a game obviously isn't the same as the much larger casual base will have, and expecting everyone to get into optimizing isn't gonna happen. But the thing is, they don't have to. All they have to do is improve until they're at a point that feels fun to them, just like you would for any video game. You don't have to be as optimized as the speedrunner, but you should feel like the better you get at reactions, the faster you can play through the levels and the more fun you'll have doing it. Now, a perfect game will manage to balance these ideas and give the casual base their own fun experience while still encouraging anyone who cares to get better for faster times and more satisfying gameplay. You know, stuff like, alternate paths that are easier but slower, and trick ramps that are fun to use but faster to ignore, or dash rings that are easy to get to and feel faster but are technically slower. And hey, have I mentioned my duck yet? It's the variety and the smooth transitions between all these things that keeps the gameplay feeling fresh. Something Sega actually learned and tried implementing past the dark eras. It's just somehow the loudest voice in the room was the one that said, "Make him a werewolf." And the Roman Empire fell for a second time. The Werehog featured in Sonic Unleashed was another attempt at keeping the gameplay interesting, straight from the mouth of the producer. But what they failed to see is that when it came to 20-minute long beat-em-up stages and questionable artwork, the former felt disjointed to the fast-paced gameplay the series was based around, and the latter wasn't anything new to begin with. Now, if the Werehog sections had also managed to incorporate fast-paced reaction-based combat, that would have been something. But for an entry and a series that's been trying to fix its reputation for more than a decade now, I think it's better we stick with our strong suits. Fast-paced, reaction-based gameplay that's constantly switching things up on the player. That's right, baby. We're talking colors. Sonic Colors is everyone's shit, and for good reason. While the level design, controls, and physics in Unleashed is arguably better because they somehow managed to accidentally delete the original engine made for it, proving without a shadow of a doubt that hedgehogs are God's favorite mistake, Colors was the first game to fully embrace the idea of swapping between microgames throughout the level. The Wisps are freaking genius because they let you go from 3D to 2D to an entirely new control scheme where you're blasting through the underground and finding completely new paths until 30 seconds later it's back to drifting, rail grinding, and more. They fundamentally changed the way you interact with the level for a fast-paced flash. Stages with laser have you on the lookout for shortcuts, Spike lets you skip entire sections if you're clever enough, and Cube is funny. A solid foundation with a genius new mechanic creates a high the series still chases to this day. What's even more shameful is that the DS version did it better. I didn't even know there was a DS version until recently, and it, along with Sonic Rush, is what fully convinced me that Sonic is like, kinda rad as shit actually. Everything I've already said and more goes for the Rush games, especially the Wisps and Colors. It's all a fast-paced, funky beat that switches tempo on you like it's breakcore, and with Hideki Naganuma underscoring the whole thing, it's like I'm back at those 6 p.m. breakdancing lessons. Rush is everything Sonic has always wanted to be. In his 20s. But 30 and over that hill now, he's gone the way of the millennial, taking slow hikes around the outdoors while listening to lo-fi beats and Frontiers. I don't need to explain to you how I feel about open worlds, we've gone over that one already, but a massive open world with nothing but slow-paced obstacle courses in between levels is not terrible, I guess, but it's definitely not Sonic. And I'm praying they don't think it is now. They make up most of the game despite having no stakes, no speed, no skill, and aren't even satisfying because you have to do like 30 of them before you're actually rewarded with anything. It's even worse when the literal flow of the game gets interrupted because rather than progressing the story, sometimes you have to take a break to collect 50 hearts so you can read one page of someone's fanfiction before having to run across the map to hear page 2. The only consolation is the real levels are decent, though that mostly has to do with the fact they're literally copy-pasted from previous games. The physics and momentum still haven't managed to recreate an engine from 2008, but with the original levels being designed around shortcuts and tricks that can be done to shave off extra time, Frontiers' strong suit is embracing its identity as a game meant to be speedrun. Speedran? Played at GDQ. Even more so with one little feature that oft goes unnoticed, the ability to reset. How many times have you found yourself in this situation? Playing expertly through a level on the verge of a new record when, oof, one misinput and you're sent soaring like my Aunt Sally on a Sunday. What tough luck! That rhythm you got going is kaput now as you clumsily open up the pause menu and go down to restart but accidentally go too far and press the options button so you go to back out but you accidentally press back out twice so the game resumes and then you fall into a pit and die and get sent back to a loading screen then a checkpoint wasting even more time? Frontiers solves this with a handy-dandy shortcut that instantly lets you start back from the beginning. It's this treatment of the levels as short-form content that you can practice and would want to easily restart, which you do, the longest one is only like 2 minutes at most, that encourages the player to get better on their journey for that S rank. Also in Frontiers, your time is the only factor that decides the rank you get, so it really is about those optimizations rather than your ability to increase the number, a feature that even Mario has left by the wayside. Which brings us back to the present, where Sonic has a choice. We can continue chasing after that mythical status as a children's game mainstay that we've fumbled in every single pass attempt, or, and as delusional as I sound saying it, we let Sonic be a game for big boys. We focus on tight controls and rhythmic, ever-changing gameplay. We don't delete the engine we invested thousands of dollars to produce. We re-establish our reputation as something not defined entirely by fanfiction and parody cartoons, and we don't fucking delete the groundbreaking engine that was supposed to be used for every single game past this. At this point, the biggest thing holding Sonic back isn't its gameplay, but its reputation. Mario does weird shit all the time, but it's not just that trademark Nintendo polish and absolute dedication to the bit that lets them get away with it. It's the fact that he's Mario. You know, Mario from Vidya? Not to get all sell me this pen on you, but set a good impression and people will always see the best in you no matter how many illegal lotteries you hold. But too many bad ideas later and everyone thinks the worst of our sad little hog, even with all the good ideas peppered in between them. Stealing a page from racing games and adding drifting sections with tight controls is genius, if only it weren't overshadowed by the abhorrent idea of making 2 versions of Unleashed and putting the worst one on the console most of the fanbase would play it on. Adding a mechanic to homing attacks so that you have to time your button press rather than spam it so you can be rewarded with a satisfying sound effect and extra boost meter does a great job at adding to the rhythmic quality of the gameplay, if only it weren't introduced in a horribly cheap-looking port. And these new Doom powers they're adding to Generations look exactly like the kind of stuff I've been talking about, actually, with maybe just a little more Linkin Park than I had in mind. I'm just saying, if Mario gets to live out his fantasies to an audience of millions, then you gotta let the hedgehog have his sled, and the gaming YouTuber his inability to let go of his childhood franchises. Because underneath all that fluff, otherwise known as human beings trying desperately to salvage a branding disaster from hell, is a fast-paced, reaction-based rhythmic dance of a game. You know, like Subway Surfers. Like what you see? Maybe subscribe. Hit that bell. I'll learn how to twirl a sign if I need to.